I'd like to take a moment to explain an important update to how you earn continuing education units through Behavior Speak. If you've earned CEUs with us before, you might remember listening for secret words throughout the episode. Under the Behavior Analyst Certification Board's updated ACE provider requirements, that process has changed. Podcasts remain an approved way to earn CEUs. However, instead of verifying participation through embedded code words, we are now required to use knowledge-based questions to evaluate engagement with the learning event. That's where the Behavior Speak knowledge check comes in. Here's how it works. First, listen to the entire episode. Once you finish listening, head over to behaviorspeak.com and open the show notes for this episode. There, you'll find the Behavior Speak Knowledge Check, a series of multiple-choice questions based on the episode's key learning points. Next, click on the CEUs tab at the top of the website and select the CEU for this episode. As part of the purchase process, you'll enter the letter corresponding to the correct answer for each question in the knowledge check. After successfully completing the knowledge check and the remaining CE requirements, you'll receive your CE certificate just as before. The knowledge check isn't meant to be a test to catch you out. Instead, it's designed to reinforce the key concepts from the conversation and encourage reflection on how they apply to your own behavior analytic practice. While the process has changed, our mission hasn't. Behavior Speak remains committed to bringing you thoughtful conversations with leading clinicians, researchers, educators, advocates, and people with lived experience from around the world. We hope these conversations continue to challenge your thinking, broaden your perspective, and strengthen your practice. Thank you for choosing Behavior Speak as part of your continuing education journey. Now let's get to today's episode. I'm Ben Ryman, and this is Behavior Speak.
So, something also that I would like to mention about the Lebanese people is that Lebanese families are incredibly resilient and committed to supporting their children. Often, despite the major social and economic challenges, so they really try their best and they want the resilience. It's embedded in us as Lebanese population. And the conditions we're living with is making our resilience stronger. So when we work with those families, being culturally responsive and respecting their background and respecting their values, it's really helpful. Also the culture. I'd like to talk about the Lebanese culture and in how much this culture affects and shape the way ABA services are being given and received. Because the Lebanese culture influences the deep family dynamics. It influences and it's impacted by the community values and the educational expectations. So it's something very important to mention that the families are highly involved in decision making. And when I say families, I'm not talking about the parents. I'm talking about the bigger family, like the grandparents, the aunts.
Yes.
So all are involved. And I think this is a really great privilege. Because if more than the parents, the father and the mother, are involved in knowing how to deal with the child, so this will facilitate and will reduce the stress on the parents.
Today's episode takes us to Lebanon, where we'll explore what it means to build a profession in the face of extraordinary challenges. My guest is Christine Der Sarkissian, president of the Association for Behavior Analysis in Lebanon. Christine shares the story of how behavior analysis has grown over the past 2 decades, from a time when families had almost no access to evidence-based services, to a growing professional community committed to ethical practice, collaboration, and inclusion. We discuss the powerful role parents played in building the field, the realities of providing services during economic crisis and conflict, the importance of culturally responsive care, and why resilience continues to drive the future of ABA in Lebanon. If you've been following our international series, this conversation offers another inspiring look at how behavior analysts around the world are adapting our science to meet local needs. Christine, welcome to Behavior Speak.
Hello, how are you?
Great to have you. Before we get started, I want to Yeah. Before we get started, I just want to acknowledge that I am an uninvited settler occupier of Isam on Sayayin on the traditional lands of the Kalaming, Kleus, Homoko, Comox, and Sechelt First Nations, who have been stewards of this land since time immemorial. So, Christine, let's start by learning a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your path into ABA and what inspired you to get into this work.
Yeah, actually, I started in the field of ABA and it was not academic. It was just practical because I was not exposed to the coursework or the textbooks and the certifications initially. So it was with direct contact with the families and the children. And I started applied behavior analysis back in 2005 when I was exposed to those children when I used to work with. And we had very limited access to evidence-based interventions here in Lebanon and in the region. So at that time, there was a gap and the families were seeking services abroad because the services were not available here in Lebanon. So basically, I started with receiving trainings and practical intervention with those individuals from companies outside Lebanon.
And going even further back, what first draw you towards this work, working with kids with autism and that sort of thing?
Yeah, actually, I started working with children as a support teacher within the school setting. I have my background in psychology, and I started working one-to-one with a mainstream classroom in an inclusive school. And this is how I started. Later on, when I got the opportunity to receive the training in applied behavior analysis, so it was really a great opportunity because we didn't have those services initially here. So I got exposed to this science in a practical way. And therefore, after being exposed and seeing all the good transformation and the improvement in the individuals, and how this teaching methodology and the support that is being provided to those individuals transform the child's ability to learn and to communicate and to participate in daily life, and how it impacts the life of the families. So I really got inspired to get to know more about applied behavior analysis and learn more how to do it in a proper way.
And where did you go to continue your training and develop more expertise?
We used to do it with the Autism Partnership in UK. And then when we learned that we can receive the coursework through online courses, so I started with the FIT BCABA courses initially back in 2010, 2011. And then I was pursuing my certification and receiving supervision from abroad again because we didn't have BCBAs locally. So this is how we got into the field, and a small community of trained people from outside Lebanon turned out to become the first certified people in the country and to create the Association of Applied Behavior Analysis in Lebanon as the affiliated chapter of ABA International later on, years later. And how we grew from 2012 until today in number working in the field, the certified people working in the field.
And sort of what was the state of autism awareness and intervention in Lebanon when you kind of first joined the field?
Actually, here in Lebanon, when I first entered the field in the early 2000s, autism awareness in Lebanon was very limited. So many families used to struggle to receive accurate diagnosis, evidence-based intervention, and it was not really understood in the early 2000s. So services were very rare. ABA itself was often unfamiliar to most of the families. Services were limited to few private initiatives and families, frequently depending from the word of mouth to find the support. And there were very few professionals who we were trained abroad with limited supervision structure. And in the early 2000s, we didn't have online supervision or telehealth that we have the luxury of having it today. And so we had, in the early years, we had very minimal multidisciplinary collaboration between schools and therapists and the families. So it was really a challenging stage for those families and those individuals when I started in the field in early 2000s.
And what were
So
some of the... Go ahead.
Yeah, so the families started receiving access. So some families who were financially, they had the means to receive international connections and seek support from abroad. So they went there. And the other families had, let's say, less privilege or they didn't have the means to receive the intervention program as it should be from ABA providers. So they were less privileged. So they relied on local providers who had very limited training and no verified credentials in behavior analysis. So the field was not really well developed. And ABA was sometimes implemented inconsistently or sometimes inaccurately, despite the good intention. But this is what we had.
And was ABA initially met with curiosity, skepticism, or resistance?
Okay, so initially applied behavior analysis and the services was initially driven by the parents' initiatives. So the parents played a pivotal and foundational role in the development of ABA services in Lebanon, as I said, because they were exposed to those services outside and from the word of mouth and being exposed to other institutions who provide ABA, probably in the West countries. So they were really foundational in establishing the field of applied behavior analysis here. So at that time, there were very limited services, minimal awareness, and there was no structured support. And the Parents Initiative really was an eye-opener for all of us to create the proper intervention opportunities for the children in Lebanon. So they brought specialists from abroad and they organized trainings for local people to learn about autism and about evidence-based practices. So over time, parents went even further by establishing NGOs or specialized centers or advocacy groups and support networks. So to fill the enormous gap that we had in the services. So the parents created the foundation upon which many of today's autism and ABA service providers or centers are built and established.
And what did advocacy look like for the parents? What kinds of efforts were the most effective?
So parents used to say, my child can't speak, I will be his voice. Or if my child needs to be integrated in a mainstream school with his siblings, so I need to create the setup for him. I need to fight to provide a proper setup, inclusive setup for the child who is diagnosed. Okay, so the parents, again, so we're talking about the parents because it really started with the parents here in Lebanon. Yeah. So they were among the strongest driving forces behind the meaningful change in the autism field in Lebanon and the evidence-based services by the science of applied behavior analysis. So many families transformed their personal challenges into advocacy efforts. As I said, during support group, awareness initiatives, like on the media and on TV programs, really advocating for their children and their rights. So I've witnessed many of the examples where parents who had created real impact, whether through founding organizations or organizing public awareness campaigns or fundraising events to facilitate services for underprivileged people, and for supporting professional training opportunities or collaborating closely with specialists to improve service quality and ethical standards. So again, the parents, with their resilience, with their persistence, and their willingness to challenge the stigma, have shaped the direction where autism services in Lebanon contributed significantly to increase awareness and support. And the actual current situation that we see today is coming from a history of advocacy and fighting and really is speaking about it. So we reach this awareness that we have today.
Yeah. You spoke about kind of early pushes for integration, inclusion, fighting against stigma. What was kind of the prognosis for autistic kids, before all this happened? What was sort of the trajectory of their lives and experiences of families and so on? What was that in the
Yeah.
past?
As we know, if I want to answer in general, it's very case specific. So some cases have received proper services or the proper setup and the environment where they were thriving to reach their potential. And some other cases who were not fit into some setups. So they were not really at ease in those setups. But when I entered the field years ago, more than 2 decades ago, the setup was in a mainstream school. The child is being included in the group with a support teacher and other multidisciplinary team members within the school setting who provide speech or occupational or psychomotor services and later on ABA services within the school setting. So it's collaborative effort with a special educator really case managing or monitoring the program. So this is how it initially started in few schools. And when I say schools, they're definitely private schools because the public sector is still working to create the setup and the inclusion and the creating the standards for the admission, for the services.
And what about diagnosis? What are the services available? What's access to diagnosis like?
Okay, usually from my personal experience, parents would like to know what is the case. They seek the label. They would like to know why my child is not responding. What is this called as label? However, us as professionals, we don't emphasize on the label or the diagnosis. What we do is we check where are the weaknesses or where are the challenges, and we provide the support needed to overcome those barriers. We see where are the strengths and we improve those strengths for the child to reach his full potential, whether in a school setting, in an academic setting, or in the community. And if, as you were asking about the diagnosis, I usually tell the parents if they come at early age, like when the child is almost 2 years old, and they haven't received the diagnosis yet. So I advise the parents, you do not wait for the diagnosis to start the intervention. You can start the intervention on specific skills or on specific goals. So the child can, with the early intervention, can reach more age-appropriate skills and the gap between them and their peers would be less. So diagnosis is the initial phase. Yes, it is the initial phase. However, it does not mean that we wait for the diagnosis to start the intervention. Parents would want that. Us as professionals, we just evaluate and assess the domains we need to target and we start the intervention. Because as I said in the beginning, it's always case specific. As we know, the spectrum and each child with autism would be having different challenges and different strengths, different levels in the intervention.
What are some of the major milestones that stand out in the growth of ABA Lebanon?
Okay. If I want to summarize, since I entered the field and maybe before I started also the services of applied behavior analysis in Lebanon, we have two major entities. First milestone is with the growth of ABA in Lebanon was significant with the increase of number of certified professionals. So in the past decade, along with the establishment for the professional network and the leadership structure within the field, we grew from in 2012 with the first couple of BCBAs until today, we have around 10 BCBAs residing in Lebanon. We do have other Lebanese BCBAs who unfortunately left the country for some reasons in the last 5 years. However, we grew in number, and after the BACB stopping providing the certification outside USA and Canada in January 2023, we do have an increased numbers of QBAs or QASPS or ABTs or IBAs and IBTs also here in Lebanon. So we grew in number. That's the first milestone. We grew in number as certified people providing services in Lebanon. Another key milestone is the establishment of the affiliated chapter Applied Behavior Analysis Lebanon, the Association of Behavior Analysis in Lebanon, which is the affiliated chapter of ABAL. It was established in 2017. So this represents an important step toward formalizing the profession locally, because one of our mission and vision in ABA Lebanon is to create a platform for collaboration among practitioners, promoting ethical and evidence-based practices, organizing conferences and professional development opportunities, regulating the science and the services of applied behavior analysis in Lebanon, strengthening Lebanon's connection with the international ABA communities, and mainly in the Arab country, in the Arab region here. So those two entities, the growth in number of certified people in Lebanon and the establishment of the affiliated chapter ABA Lebanon, I think those two milestones help consolidate the growth of ABA in Lebanon. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it. I'm curious about the numbers. So you said you have 10 BCBAs, and that's kind of beginning in 2012. You know, the BACB pulled out in, was it end of 22? So
Yes, 1st January 2023. So it stopped.
Right. So, you know, averaging essentially one BCBA a year. Why so few BCBAs in that period?
So this was I want to clarify, like 5 years ago in 2019 and 2020, before the crisis in Lebanon and before the war and before whatever was happening here in Lebanon, we were around 15 BCBAs in Lebanon.
Okay, I see. Because they left. Oh.
They left the country to other areas. So they're working. We have more Lebanese BCBAs, but they're not residing in Lebanon.
I see, yes.
We're very few, like one BCBA per year. So this was the exposure initially, I think, for the professionals.
Yeah.
However, now I'm assuming that you would be asking, is it enough having 10 BCBAs or like a few QBAs and few IBAs in Lebanon? Actually, those certified supervisory level certified people are residing mainly in Beirut and in Mount Lebanon, so in main cities in Lebanon. The other governorates that are in the north or in the south or in Bekaa, so those remote areas, we do not have certified people. So if somebody needs to provide services in other areas, they need to travel across the regions to oversee or to provide the services in remote areas that we have. So definitely we're very few. The need is much more. And mainly the supervisory level need is really so much in need, because we do have technicians and we need provide the proper supervision and the proper amount of supervisory hours and time for each of those technicians.
Yes.
So we're working on that. And when I was talking about what the families did and what the parents did, other than establishing NGOs and really working, part of the advocacy, they were funding coursework for some individuals. So they were raising funds to have more people become supervisors or supervisory levels.
Yeah. And so I imagine, and I think this seems to be the case across the board when I speak to behavior analysts in different countries, that there seems to be lots of technicians and very few behavior analysts. And you're saying is supervision the sort of the biggest barrier here to growing more behavior analysts in the country? Are there a lot of RBTs, IBTs, ABATs, etc., that maybe would like to grow in the field, but they just don't have access to supervision? Is that the main issue?
Yeah, actually, here in Lebanon, we do have only 3 certified course provider entities.
Okay.
We don't have ABA courses in universities. So we just have it as private centers providing the coursework as certified course providers. And a lot of people who would like to reach the supervisory level, and they it's getting slow. So it's not fast track, and it's not like they have the drive and they move forward. So it's just taking time.
Can we talk a little bit about let's talk a little bit about ABA Lebanon. So it was formed in 2017. What was sort of the early days of ABA Lebanon like? How did you all come together and sort of make the decision to form ABAL?
Yeah. So the initial group who came together to create Association for Behavior Analysis Lebanon, we were initially colleagues, and we were initially working together for the same families or for the same children. So
Wow.
we were colleagues and friends, and we really wanted to establish the standards and to regulate the field because, as you know, behavior analysis as a science, or the practitioner who have attended like few hours or just coursework, they call themselves ABA therapists.
Right.
And we only wanted to create the standards and to regulate the field. And we explored how we can create the chapter. So we got together following the requirement of establishing the chapter according to the requirements of ABAI. And we just applied and things moved forward. We got the approval and we created the association. What we are working now is maybe collaborating with the syndicates, or maybe collaborating with the Ministry of Education. How we can reach out those, let's say, governmental entities or maybe official entities to bring forward the Association of Applied Behavior Analysis become more legitimate or maybe more known in the country. So we just got together 10 passionate passionate people, and we created the Association for Behavior Analysis in Lebanon.
And I want to get more into what ABAL does and some of the activities, but I wanted to know a little bit about funding and services. Is ABA mostly accessed privately, and sort of how are services funded? And then also, are there any services that, and if they aren't funded, are there any services that are funded for kids with autism?
It's one of the barriers that we have here in the country. Applied behavior analysis services are not funded from any of the government institutions or insurance companies. We do not have ABA services funded by any of the entities. So it's one of the barriers. However, we know that the intensive hours per week services of ABA is really beneficial, and it has proven to be effective for the individuals receiving those services. So we do not, as an association, ABA Lebanon, we do not provide funding for the services, but we would like to maybe have the Ministry of Health maybe, or collaborating with other entities to make the cost of the ABA services being more affordable for some families. However, we're still, with the crisis that we have in Lebanon and the challenges that we're facing, every year we have a lot of challenges. So it's very difficult and it's challenging to get funds for the services in ABA.
Well, maybe we should talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about Lebanon, the culture, the people, some of the positives, some of the good things that are happening, because I think, many folks on my side of the world, only know Lebanon in the context of crisis and war, and tragedy. And I really want to finish off our conversation, I think, talking about some of the good things. I've been privileged to have a few of your colleagues on the podcast already. I think maybe all of them were probably presidents of ABAL at one time. Sazan Razouk, Rola Anan, Asman Saleh, all, brilliant, incredible behavior analysts in their own right, doing just mind-blowing work in the context of sort of all of this trauma. Can we talk a little bit about you said sort of pre-2020, pre-crisis, kind of post-crisis. What was kind of happening in 2019 and 2020, and how did that sort of change sort of the landscape of ABA and the lives of parents and families of kids with autism.
Yeah. So the crisis, as you said, started in 2019. And, as you mentioned, my colleagues, Dr. Asmahan, Rula Annan, and Sausan. Rula Annan and Dr. Asmahan were in Lebanon. But after that period, after 2020, they left the country. So they are from the Lebanese BCBAs who are residing outside Lebanon. However, they keep supporting us. They keep supporting the association. They do follow up few families here in Lebanon, but they reside outside. So after 2019, the crisis, the financial economic crisis came, and then we had the Beirut explosion at the port. And then after that, we were tangled in the war for so many years. Last year in 2024, and now also it's really affecting any project or plans that we as association ABAL are planning to do. Because if we want to plan for something, things are unpredictable. So if we want to organize a conference, things are really edgy because we don't know what might come up. So what we are doing currently is providing continuing education webinars for our network, and we're just trying to keep things on track for our network, for the science of ABA and all that. So for us as Association for Behavior Analysis in Lebanon, our goal is to contribute and regulate the profession and to create ethical development in the field of Lebanon. Our mission is to promote evidence-based practices, to raise awareness for the parents so they are not receiving misleading services or misleading therapies for their children. So we are also, as we did our last conference in October 2025, our main goal and aim was to collaborate with other service providers, the speech, the occupational therapist, and the psychomotor therapist, and the psychologist. So the topics that we created for the conference were really, really about multidisciplinary collaboration. How, as a team, each member in the team has its own specialization, his own expertise, and how together we can make it more successful for the integration and the inclusion and the successful intervention for those individuals. So that's mainly what we've been struggling with. Also, from the challenges that we are facing recently is the displaced individuals from the areas that are really targeted, and they moved from their homes and they are in shelters or in other places.
Yes.
So all the stability that every individual needs and individuals on the spectrum really need is really shaken. So there is no stability and there is no proper intervention and continuation, sustainable work in the field for those individuals receiving those services. So things have changed for the past 7 years. Yes, they have changed. We are really struggling and we want to keep the standards high. We want to maintain what we have achieved. But yeah, we're trying our best.
Yeah. I can't even imagine sort of some of the experiences you've been having. I understand, yeah, Rola and Asman, talked about how they left, and, some of that certainly was to, protect their families and a variety of reasons. What's kept you there?
Actually, I wasn't. I came back. I left Lebanon in 2021 and came back in 2024. So I came back because I'm very patriotic. And when I was working abroad, the thought that I used to have in mind all the time was that I want my people to benefit from my knowledge. I want my people to benefit from my expertise. I have a center, and I kept my center during the years when I wasn't here. And I was trying to follow up remotely with the therapist here. So I left for a short period and I came back willing to stay this time. I'm not willing to go because really there's no place like home.
And I've had a few guests on. I mean, Tazen really did a sort of a wonderful job kind of digging into sort of the trauma aspect of all of this and the
Yeah.
crisis and some of the work she'd been doing and with colleagues to sort of support practitioners in the field and sort of boots on the ground. And I had a great interview with Dr. Iman Farajala about the experiences of children in Gaza and the war effects on them, and just the incredible, the sort of the complex, continuous trauma that she described that many of these families and children have been undergoing for decades. It's intergenerational trauma in some sense, but it's also constant trauma. So parents undergoing the trauma of the war, then parents watching their children undergo the trauma of their war, children witnessing their families dying in the trauma of the war, and all of this, and watching their homes destroyed. What kind of supports? First off, I think how has that been for you? How has that been for your center? How has that been for the children you're serving? You talk about the displacement. What does support for these families, as well as support for your staff, look like in the context of a continuous crisis?
It's challenging. As much as it's challenging for the families, it is challenging for the care providers or for the service providers. Like, we emotionally are really attached to all what's happening. Like, I'll talk about my personal experience now. Usually when I work with children, I get emotionally attached because it's something cultural. Here in Lebanon, everybody gets emotionally involved, all the family members. Like, we do have those family bonds and the values. And so it's something within the culture. And adding to that is the war and the empathy that we feel with every single person who, for example, is misplaced or displaced, or a person who lost a family member. Like, I had a client who had reached out a few weeks ago, and I said, I'll call you back later. So after a couple of days, I called her. She's a new client. She was seeking services for her daughter. After a few days, when I called her back, she said, now we heard that my brother just passed away in the war. And so it was very unpredictable discussion because like everybody every day you meet someone who lost a person, who lost from our acquaintances or people around us. So it's very touching emotionally. So what we can do to support those people, as you said, Sausan was doing the task force during the Gaza war, as we said, and now we're living it here in Lebanon, and we're living it with the people we know or we have worked with or we got in touch with. So I can't find the words to describe how we would feel and what could have been done differently just to make it easier for those people.
Yeah. And what about your staff? What do supports look like for them? And because they're literally on the front lines with these children sometimes in really scary situations.
I don't want to seem selfish, but my center is in an area that is a little bit geographically a little distant from the main place where the war is happening, or a little bit distant from Beirut. And the clients who are coming to receive the services are from this area. So we are geographically not very close to the tension area. We are affected definitely, but geographically we are not in the main cities or region where the war is happening.
But I imagine you have colleagues that have maybe centers that are closer to the danger and are supporting staff. Is ABAL doing anything to sort of provide supports for them and help them address the burnout and the stress of all of this?
To be honest, what we have already done earlier when Sausan was the president and she took the initiative in 2024, we still have that task force running. And we have the ACT course that is available for people who would like to attend, and it's going to be very helpful for them.
Nice.
we've done that, and it was really beneficial for all of us as providers, as service providers. So we do encourage everybody to reach out and take the ACT course that we have it provided from ABAL.
Great. So, shifting gears a bit, tell me a little bit more about Lebanon and kind of, the culture, the people, a bit about sort of some of the demographics. Are there a lot of people there? And is everyone sort of centered in the big cities? Tell me a little bit about, the landscape.
Yeah.
Lebanon sounds like a really beautiful place, and I'd love to kind of hear more about the country and the people.
It is. It is. It's a beautiful place. Geographically, it's beautiful. The landscape is really rich. So we are on the coast and we have the mountains. So it's a beautiful setup. Also, the culture. I'd like to talk about the Lebanese culture and how much this culture affects and shape the way ABA services are being given and received. Because the Lebanese culture influences the deep family dynamics. It influences and it's impacted by the community values and the educational expectations. So it's something very important to mention that the families are highly involved in decision making. And when I say families, I'm not talking about the parents. I'm talking about the bigger family, like the grandparents, the aunts.
Yes.
So all are involved. And I think this is a really great privilege, because if more than the parents, the father and the mother, are involved in knowing how to deal with the child, so this will facilitate and will reduce the stress on the parents. So let's say a lot of families will get worried, how would I travel for a vacation? I can't leave my son. But when the aunt and the uncle and the grandparents, they know how to deal with this child when the parents are absent, so I'm relieved. So that's really good. So this is, I think, one of the good positive points that we have about the Lebanese culture, and how the family dynamics and the bonding with the family members is really positive impact for the people receiving ABA services. Also, building the trust and the collaboration with the parents and the extended family members. So it's really essential.
So tell me more about that. What does kind of culturally responsive ABA look like in practice in Lebanon?
That Lebanon, we are diverse. We have all religions. We have it's a diversity here in Lebanon. So being culturally responsive is respecting the family values. It's respecting the background of the client we're working with, and ensuring that the goals are meaningful with the child's real life environment, with the setup he is in or the family he's coming from. So interventions cannot be simply copied from the Western models. We need to consider the local culture as well and the family culture as well. So something also that I would like to mention about the Lebanese people is that Lebanese families are incredibly resilient and committed to supporting their children, often despite the major social and economic challenges. So they really try their best, and the resilience is within, it's embedded in us as Lebanese population. And the conditions we're living with is making our resilience stronger. So when we work with those families, being culturally responsive and respecting their background and respecting their values, it's really helpful.
Were there some Western assumptions kind of built into ABA that needed to be adapted locally? ABA is such a North American sort of origins, and so I often wonder about sort of what needs to be adapted locally and for in different cultures.
Yeah, okay, we do follow our ethical code of conduct, and we do follow the restrictions that we have as certified people. However, because the Lebanese people and the culture in Lebanon is maybe very welcoming, and because we visit those clients at home, and when we do home visits and we're entering their space, so a lot of families would really emphasize on inviting you for a coffee or inviting you to have a bite with them. And all this, like, as much as we try to be following the ethics and like the idea of receiving the gifts. So we know that initially we do not receive gifts. However, as a culture here in Lebanon, if you refuse a gift, it's like an insult. Because they just want to appreciate you and they would acknowledge your effort and your services, and you just cannot receive unless it's something symbolic. So we do have those challenges when we visit the home of those clients, but the parents are really being more understanding when we explain to them why and all this. So comparing to what is being done in the Western countries and the culture here in Lebanon and how we need to be a little bit more flexible. So it's just finding the balance.
I was reading the ABA Lebanon vision statement, and you speak up about protecting dignity and the community cultural fabric. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so it's very important to respect the client dignity. So there is no argument on that. So we treat the client with dignity and with respect, and it's something very important. And in our vision, so what we work on as ABA Lebanon is to make the services more accessible and culturally responsive. So we would like to see stronger inclusive systems, more professional certification pathways in universities, improved interdisciplinary collaboration, greater support for families across all socioeconomic backgrounds. So what we can do is to make this vision more concrete and to make this vision more accessible to everyone. So this is what we would like to do eventually.
We talked earlier about the parent advocacy.
I just want to clarify one more thing before we move on. So when we talk about compassion, we talk about empathy, we talk about empowerment, we talk about when we have the good knowledge, we transform the life of other people.
Yes.
And when we are resilient, as we said, we provide sustainable change, and this will help the communities grow in a good way. So our mission is, as we said, rooted on compassion, empowerment, and integrity. And as you have mentioned also, the dignity while dealing with the client that we're working with.
Yeah.
And the intervention need to be effective and human.
You talked earlier about parents advocating for more inclusion and integration in schools. Tell me a bit about the progress that's been made towards inclusion in schools.
Okay, so as we said, initially, the system was established in a way where the school provides the setup with the multidisciplinary team members, with the support teacher accompanying the child within the classroom. So this is how the system was initially built, okay? So there has been an important progress toward the inclusion in schools, whether in public and private schools, compared to previous years. So when we initially started providing inclusive setup or mainstream school receiving those cases. Now we have more schools who are becoming more integrating for the neurodivergent students. And what we thrive now is to have a better environment or better neurodivergent friendly setup, adapting the environment for them. So to have it more accessible and have the community accept those cases, neurodivergent in general, autism or other. So this is how we need to have the school systems working toward better inclusive setup. So as we said, also, because of the crisis, inclusion remains inconsistent due to financial restraints and lack of awareness. So many schools still lack staff training. They lack appropriate accommodation. They're trying to provide individualized support system, but not as it should be, like the standards requirement. We need to work more on creating inclusive policies because for me, inclusion should not only mean physical placement in the classroom. It should also involve environmental adaptation, as I said, meaningful participation of the individual with his peers, proper interaction with dignity. So the inclusion idea in the community is still emerging. In schools, it's better, but in the community, it's still emerging.
And what do you think true inclusion would look like in Lebanon 5 or 10 years from now?
Well, best case scenario, when we face the challenges that we have, currently we are facing like around 5 major challenges in the services of ABA in Lebanon. The first one is the sustainability. Like we're facing the challenge for autism services need to be ongoing. And due to the economic crisis, so this is causing great pressure on the families and on the professionals and on the schools and the service providers and the centers to sustain.
Yeah.
So the crisis we're facing is making it difficult to maintain consistent and affordable intervention services over time. That's the first challenge. Another major challenge is the scarcity of services in remote areas, as we said.
Yeah.
So if we improve that area, that would be good. So outside the main cities, we do not have qualified service providers or qualified centers. So it remains concentrated in urban areas and many families and clients or children being left out because in other governorate, the services are very limited. The third challenge, which is also a significant need to be addressed, as we said, is the supervisory level professionals. So if we improve that as a projection 10 years from now, that will be really a huge step ahead because certified and highly trained behavior analysts who can provide quality supervision and mentorship and program oversight is very few. So we need to expand the workforce while maintaining high standards of practice, providing supervisory level certificate. The challenge is, as we said, the instability in the situation here, who created further challenges for the displaced families, as we said. They have experienced disruption in schooling, disruption in therapy services, disruption in the routine, and the access to the essential cares. So for autistic individuals, this sudden change and instability have a significant impact on emotional regulation, on the behavior, on the learning, and the overall well-being. So that's the fourth challenge. And the last challenge, finally, if we can improve in the coming 10 years projection, as you were asking, is providing systemic support because we need governmental involvement. We need public policies. We need insurance coverage for services, which is still limited. Okay. This places much of the financial burden directly on the families. So we need greater institutional and governmental support to ensure long-term accessibility, consistency, and the quality of services across Lebanon. So those challenges are our goals for the 10 years. So if we look ahead and we can overcome in the next 10 years, that will be great.
There's a lot of interesting things happening in the field kind of across the Middle East. What have there been opportunities, or what opportunities might there be for collaboration sort of internationally?
Yeah, so in the Middle East, actually, we are part of a group of the certified people who speak Arabic in the area. So
Right.
we are in constant communication with the Arab certified people internationally. So we do have Lebanese people who are not residing in Lebanon who participate in international conferences, international ABAI events or other. So we do have people taking part in that. So I think this kind of communication and collaboration between the community of the Arab certified people and Lebanese who have the accessibility to be part of international events. So that's really helpful.
With all of the challenges you've elaborated on and the ongoing crises, where are you still seeing hope? What gives you optimism right now?
Okay, actually, I've been in the field for the past 28 years. What kept me in the field is the impact that we see in the individuals we're working with and the change we see in the life of the families we work with. So what kept me in the field so far is the passion and the drive and the change we see in those people. So it's very meaningful and rewarding for me. So where I see hope, I always see hope. We can't live without the hope. Watching families, I feel more hopeful and more empowered because it's one of the greatest rewards in this work. So providing the opportunities who seemed impossible earlier, or listening to feedback from families who were hopeless and then they saw progress. So we cannot just give up because of the crisis. Just we keep on trying and we keep on doing our mission.
Just another example of that resiliency that you talk so much about in Lebanese culture. I'm curious, there are, sadly, we live in a world where crisis is happening globally, and there are a lot of professionals who are in similar contexts where there's very few of them trying to develop the field in their own countries. And what kind of advice would you offer to professionals working to expand services in similar contexts?
Okay, I don't know what to give advice, but what I can say is that you never lose hope. I know there are a lot of challenges and barriers where, as I said earlier, we cannot plan like from few months ahead. We cannot plan because we don't know what would happen. Actually, with ABA Lebanon, we have organized in 2023 and in 2020, we have had organized 2 conferences, but we had to cancel in 2020 due to the COVID lockdown and in 2023 due to Gaza war and the things that were happening. So we had to cancel them because things are unpredictable. However, what I would say is that we don't stop working. We just find alternatives. As I said, this year we're doing continuing education webinars once per month for our network. We will keep on doing. So we are living in a world where nothing is predictable, but we have always alternative and we have some facilitated methods to just keep on our mission and keep on doing what we believe is the right thing to do.
What's one key message you hope listeners take away from our conversation and your work?
So one message I hope all listeners would take away is that ABA is not only about behavior change. It is about improving the quality of life of individuals, increasing opportunities, and helping individuals participate meaningfully in their communities. So for me, ABA is not only a science, it's something I'm passionate about. And in Lebanon, despite the challenges, we have witnessed resilience, growth, and progress. And there's still so much work to do, but there is also a lot of potential for creating more inclusive and supporting systems for individuals, neurodivergent individuals, autism or other, and their families. So the message that I want to just summarize our discussion now, as I said, is resilience, growth, and progress.
And is there anything that we didn't cover that seems important to mention?
I think we've mentioned everything. We talked about ABA Lebanon. We talked about the growth in ABA from when we started until today with the increase of the number of certificates in Lebanon. We also spoke about the inclusive system in schools, and we said we still lack the inclusive communities or inclusive environment outside the school setting.
Yeah.
So we've mentioned that, I think, and we also mentioned the challenges, the current challenges that we hope by the coming 10 years to overcome. And we spoke about the Lebanese culture and how much it affects our work.
Mm.
And that's it mainly.
Yeah. Great.
As a president for the Association of Behavior Analysis in Lebanon, so we really keep our mission to promote evidence-based practices, to promote professional standards, collaboration, awareness, and the education in behavior analysis. So I'd like to highlight one of the accomplishments that we did and we're proud about is bringing together the multidisciplinary professionals from different fields to collaborate and share the goal, which is supporting the individuals and their families we're working with. So those initiatives, we've worked to strengthen the connection between behavior analysts, educators, speech therapists, occupational therapists, psychologists, and other stakeholders for improving the care and the inclusion. We hope also to have this collaboration being extended in universities and in courses. So I think this summarized it all.
Yeah, that's awesome. Christine, thanks for coming on Behavior Speak. This was great to learn about Lebanon, learn about the work you're doing, and learning about the history of ABA in Lebanon. It was
Thank you
amazing.
so much for this opportunity, and it was really amazing discussion.
Thank you for listening to Behavior Speak. If you enjoyed today's conversation with Christine Der Sarkissian, be sure to explore more episodes highlighting behavior analysts working across the Middle East and around the world. You can listen to my conversation with Sazan Razouk about supporting practitioners during humanitarian crises in Lebanon and Gaza, and with Dr. Iman Farajala, who shares her experiences supporting children and families living through conflict in Gaza. Together, these conversations highlight the resilience, compassion, and innovation of professionals working in incredibly challenging circumstances. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share the episodes with colleagues who are interested in international behavior analysis and culturally responsive practice. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Behavior Speak.